Okay, so here's the question. Communication mishaps happen all the time. That's more of a statement. Um, my husband, for instance, I told Dom ahead of time I'm going to out him a lot this weekend. Um, he has this thing where he talks to people in an accent if they have an accent. And it seems to be something that he's entirely unaware of. So people have brought it up to him. And early on in the film, it's established that by Sean and his mom that maybe he's not aware that he has a stuttering issue all the time. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to just get a little personal with the panel here right away and just say, do you personally have any communication faux pas that you've been told about but you seem to be unaware of in the moment? Mwahaha.
Nobody tells me anything, so.
Yep.
Too bad my husband's not here. He could talk all night about
Well,
that.
you know.
Well, I guess the biggest one for me, which is the communication problem I'm working on the most right now, is I tend to react very big to things, including things that really don't require that much of a reaction to. And I accidentally, like in the case of recently, accidentally got my phone wet in the rain and it wasn't working. And rather than start off in a way of like, okay, nothing serious is wrong, but my phone is not working right now, I sort of went into an instant, oh my God, oh no, and freaking out. And I may have sent messages like that to my fiance while he was at work.
Allegedly.
And wasn't until afterwards that I realized that wasn't quite the right way to handle that. And I tend to do that a lot without realizing until after the fact that, so I'm trying to work more on my reaction skills so I don't cause people to jump when it's not really that big of a thing.
Nice. I like it.
Oh, it's my turn.
Feel free.
Um,
Michael said he's perfect. And
I said nobody tells me anything.
aren't
I
we all
figure-
perfect?
no one has told me I'm not perfect.
Nobody tells me things like, oh, you're on a Q&A panel tonight. Oh.
I totally included him on that email. I just want to say.
I mean, I don't think I have any problems with talking. I mean, if that sounds weird, but I mean, if I could like turn it the other way, I always make fun of my parents because they have like I think like a thick Boston accent, and I'm always like, oh, you like talk funny, you know, I can understand you, and they're like, what are you talking about? I talk perfectly fine. So I don't think I personally have any problems with the communication. Just
Give it time. Give it time.
yeah, soon enough.
That made me think of something that happened to me when I was on the job. I was working with this lady who had a stroke, and she completely lost her ability to speak. And we started doing therapy, and all her sounds were coming back. I mean, it was amazing, the progress that she made. No matter what I did, I couldn't get an R out of her. And I was racking my brain, why isn't this working? Everything else. And then it occurred to me. And I said one day, did you have a Boston accent? So she never had an R. I couldn't bring it back because it wasn't there.
You're like screaming at her, say your R's.
That is fabulous. Well, you should have had her say Christina, because it would come out Christiner.
Let's take it from the end and put it in the middle.
That's right. I think my communication faux pas is talking too much. When I'm nervous, I'll fill silence with more words. And so I'm actually working with a coach right now, like a one-on-one coach. And that's one of the things that I've chatted about. You get to bring up whatever you want. They don't tell you what you should do. I said, I think I talk too much. So that's mine. I think I talk too much.
To go along with that of faux pas when you're nervous, I also find that I tend to respond to questions way too quickly when I'm nervous. So it takes that moment afterwards where I go, oh, what did I just respond to? You know, when someone asks you, oh, have you seen that? Yeah. Oh, wait, no, I haven't. I
But
hope you
yes,
don't
I
ask
mean
me more
no.
questions about that.
Yes. I've done that too. It's more like I just keep nodding.
Yeah.
And then they'll ask follow-up questions. I'm like, actually,
Yeah.
I was just kind of going along with whatever you said. So
Yep.
No, I say nobody tells me anything, but I'm sure they tell me things. My problem is just that I live inside my head. So I'm just off in another world. So I'm sure people are telling me, hey, you know, you do this, but I was, you know, in Middle Earth or something.
Well, one thing my husband used to get pretty steamed at me about, I'm glad he's not here to hear me say that to a room full of people. There's something right there. I just said something bad about him in public. But anyway, we used to go into stores, and when salespeople would come over, I didn't even realize I was doing this, but I would just get very cold. And my thing was, I'm like, I don't want to be attacked here. And he said I was being very rude. So now I've learned to be very nice to everybody. I don't know if I am successfully, but I work on it.
I think it's worth it to stay rude. I was nice to the lady at the dance store, and she tried to recruit me for some home business. I was like, did you not hear me say I have 3 jobs and children? Like, I need not to stay-at-home business.
I
thought-
can't picture you being rude.
I need to work on it. Should we go to the next one? Okay, so here's number 2. Dominic will give us the slide for that. This is number 1. Nope. Oh, yeah, number 2. Huh. So ironically, though, Sean, as we've talked about, I think, in the behind the scenes, is the one with the stutter. It's Mom and David that end up having the communication problem. So the question is, how do you imagine the conversation would go between these characters when next they meet? What comes next in these people's relationship? From your perspective.
I wish the other actor was here to answer that.
I know. He's in Disney World, just to say.
Disney World, no. It would probably be really awkward. I don't know what would. I'm not in the situation you are, so I don't.
I don't even know how to answer that, because the mother, she can't be outing her kid's issue, so she can't explain to the young man that, you know, I wasn't, you know, making eyes at you, because then that would be like I was making eyes at my son.
It's not you, it's him.
This just got edible.
I don't know how she would, you know, explain her way out of that. You know, I suppose she'd just have to be general and say, you know, something got misinterpreted.
What if she can't explain her way out of it? And it's like, you know, 40 years later and they're married and it finally comes out.
Oh my gosh.
I smell a sequel.
Anybody can try.
I don't know. This is probably the question that I've been thinking the most about since reading the ones you were going to ask today. I don't know. There's a part of me that wonders if maybe, I mean, if David doesn't hear from you or see anything come of it, he might just realize that he was interpreting it the wrong way. Because, I mean, at the start, he's kind of thrown off by it. And it's not till later on that he realizes that he's kind of into it. So I think that there's also that possibility where he might just realize, uh-oh.
You might get mad. Yeah. She was leading me on, and she dropped me.
David and Sean probably won't be friends anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what happens here when Sean maybe realizes what's going on? And like, you're hitting on my mom? I'm sorry, I just don't think we can hang out anymore.
Yeah, that would probably really weird. I don't know what I would do. Do I even have
What
a
would
dad?
you do?
Where's my dad?
Turns out there's time travel involved. It's David all along.
Yeah, I think the dad should go beat up David.
What if the dad is David? But he's time traveled
Oh my God.
through a multiverse in a wormhole.
That would be so weird. I also contemplated this a lot because I'll use this film tomorrow for a Sunday morning service. And but before I thought about it for the service, my first reaction in my head was, Mom would flip a lid and be like, "You can never see this boy again. Like it's just, your friendship is over." Now, since I've imagined other scenarios, that was my first thought. I was like, "Well, this is done." Like, I know. So funny.
I think, though, that, you know, she's a very involved mom, and she really wants her kid to have, you know, friendships and, you know, flourish socially. So,
Yes.
and you can see that she has affection for David. She puts her hand on his shoulder, and then she realizes how, you know, maybe she shouldn't have done that. But again, she's in a tough place because she doesn't want him to be removed from her son's life.
Yeah. See, I didn't think that deep initially. But yeah. Okay, let me ask the third question. So, question 3. So, since misunderstanding people is such a common problem, and I'll talk more about that tomorrow too, but in case you're not going to be there, if you Google miscommunication, you get like 7.5 million hits. It's amazing. So, do you guys have any conflict resolution techniques that you could share with the rest of the group? Because maybe the upside of this type of movie is that there's something we can learn from it, and there's something we can learn from each other. So, do you have conflict resolution techniques?
Probably just resolve it as soon as possible because the longer you wait, I don't know. Not
Yeah.
that anything like this has ever happened to me. But if something like this happened, I'd probably want to resolve it as quick as possible because the longer you wait, then the more awkward it's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's along the lines of what I was going to say because, I don't know, I find that personally I have a bad habit of putting something off if I'm not quite sure how to handle it or how to deal with it. And then it just makes it even more awkward to try to deal with later on. So I've been trying to get better at just dealing with it as soon as possible, and even if it's an awkward thing to try to deal with, just getting it, doing it, and moving past it.
Well, I spent the past 2 days, and I'll be spending tomorrow, in a seminar about teaching parents who have language-delayed children how to foster their language, and some of it is kind of like a conflict resolution where you're basically showing people what they're doing wrong and getting them to do it a different way, and you have to be very careful with your language. You know, you can't say, you know, that's wrong. You'll just lose the person. So you have to start with building on what they're doing correctly, and that will overtake the things that are not optimal. So, you know, it's dicey. You have to, you definitely have to be careful with the words that you choose because it can get very emotional very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah, I think for me, it's sort of, I tend to be very much in the line of wanting to communicate and just figure this out somewhat as quickly as possible. But not so much because of the quickness of it. It's almost more of just the more difficult or awkward it is, the more it's just going to bug me or it's going to weigh me down. So I'd rather just go ahead and let's just get in there and slug this out one way or another so that hopefully we can get past it versus walking around for the next week with like, this is like eating at the back of my brain kind of thing. So that's, I don't know, maybe that's not conflict resolution, that's conflict creation.
I will say
Right.
that the older I get, the more I'm pretty straight with letting somebody know that they've ticked me off, which doesn't happen very often at all. Because I guess I let a lot of things roll off my shoulders, but when something really gets in my craw, I'll let somebody know in a pretty upfront way. I'm thinking mostly of work situations. And then if I don't get a satisfactory, actually I don't even really care about the response. I care more that I got it off my chest. And if somebody doesn't even respond, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. So I think one thing I learned about my personality a few years back was when I'm under stress, I'll sympathetically agree with someone even if I don't agree with them, which has led to very awkward meetings with bosses. Like, the person next to me is like, I thought we were on the same page. I thought this is where we were going together. I was like, I think that's a horrible idea. And then the person gets in trouble because they're stepping in my department, and why were they doing that? And I was like, this is my fault. This is somehow my fault. I know it's my fault. Because in the moment, I felt pressured to just agree, and so I've had to learn, don't just agree, just to agree. It's funny, too, this whole, like, get it done right away. We once called our family. We were probably the first year of marriage. And we called our family and said, we're not making it to Thanksgiving dinner because we have to finish this argument. And my aunt came over, and she was like, you get your butt over there right now, young lady. Do you know how hard it is to get the family together? You put this on the back burner, and you get to Thanksgiving dinner. And I was like, okay. So except for that, we try to, we talked for 2 hours, actually, just today. Not because we were fighting, but because it's just something that we have to figure out, you know. And so getting it all on the table and working it through seems like a big deal. And then I think probably apologizing is something I've learned in a lot of trainings. Like, even if you don't think you're wrong, it's like somehow seeing and hearing that other person's feelings and what they've been through and what the legacy of that is. And so, yeah, apologizing. Are there other thoughts? So what I'd like to do now is open it up to all of you. So do you have specific questions? And you can direct them to a person individually, or you can direct it to the whole group. And what I'll probably do is repeat your question so that we have it for the whole group. And then this comes out as bonus material so that the camera also has it. Question is, having directed someone else's work and then directed your own work, what do you prefer directing?
I don't know. I think it's a little hard to compare because it's really, it's an interesting and fun experience to try to take what someone else has put together and put your own twist on it. But from my experience of directing my own stuff, I find that while I'm writing it, I'm already seeing it, so it's a little easier. Once I get out there, I know specifically what I had intended by every scene, whereas when what I've learned from directing someone else is that I have to kind of take it step by step and figure out, okay, how do I see that happening? And then, oh, okay, now we're into editing. How do I see this going together? Now we're in music. How do I see that going together? Whereas, like for the short that I did before this, I kind of had more of a sense of everything as I was writing it, so before we even got into the pre-production process. But I mean, they're both fun ways to do it. I'd love to do both again. I'd love to direct more of my own stuff, and I'd love to direct more of other people's.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
When you're writing something you know you're going to direct, are you coming up with your shot list while you're composing the script?
So the question is, no, just kidding.
I think we're going to need some conflict resolution over here.
Yeah, actually, for the most part, I am. As I'm writing it, I see it in my head, and I actually have been working harder at making sure I don't write shots into the script or write too much description that isn't needed for just the script. I have to actually work really hard at keeping myself from putting all those little directorial pieces in there.
Why do you want to hold back on that?
Because it makes it really wordy and lengthy, and I know from at least back when I was at Emerson in my feature writing class, I tended to do that sort of stuff, I would add certain things in there, and that's when I learned that you're not, like certain things that I would put in there, I learned that you're not supposed to do. I can't think of a good example right this second.
Well, I
but-
think if it's a script that's going to somebody else to direct,
Mhm.
they get steamed if they see that you're trying to be the director as well.
Right.
But when it's something you're writing and you know that you're going to be
Mhm.
the director, I just wondered.
Yeah. Yeah, I take those things and I kind of put them in a separate spot. I try to keep, at least I've been working lately on trying to keep in the script as if someone else were going to be directing it, so that when people read through it, my specific ideas are kind of somewhere else, and I don't want to like bog people down, especially because I like being able to get other people's thoughts on what they've read without me imposing too much of the specifics that I have in mind, because oftentimes I find that someone else actually can come up with a very, very clever idea that I have never even thought of, and then I can kind of sometimes make that work in with the stuff I already had.
Other questions?
So the question is, where does the movie go?
Yes. Nice
Um,
job.
I was waiting for you to repeat it. But you didn't, so. Well, it will go on the Stories by the River website, so storiesbytheriver.org. It will be available there, streaming and download option. The behind the scenes will be there. These bonus materials that we're shooting right now will be available there as well. And we will also put it up on our YouTube channel. And we also then market it to individuals who just want to check out the movie. We have a name your own price model. So basically whatever, anyone decided like, oh, this is maybe looks cool, I'll pay $1 for it, sure. Or if people just are like, this is cool what you guys are doing, I want to support it, here's $10, and download it, whatever. But then we also do marketing to other educational institutions, churches, other groups like that want to utilize short films like this as conversation starters. So we try to market to people like that as well and make these kinds of tools available so they can either use it as sort of background information that they look at first and sort of decide, okay, this is what I'm going to do with this, or they can just utilize these videos and show them to a group and let sort of the videos kind of spark the discussion. But yeah, the idea is that in those settings you have the option either way, but at least you show the movie and launch a conversation from there. So, yep. Right. Yes, we show them here.
Just broad. It's very broad. Yes. So the question is to Audrey, what's the writing process? What do you do if you get writer's block?
Well, with the shorts, I just kind of onto the page. I feel like they kind of write themselves. They're very, very easy for me. However, recently I was challenged to write a 30-page script. Someone wants me to write a short about a disco dance competition, and I have 12 pages written so far, and it's so much harder than doing these little ones. Oh my gosh, I have to come up with conflict and resolution. So I certainly have a ways to develop in terms of writing longer scripts. Writer's block. I have so many unproduced scripts right now that my problem has been stop writing, because I can't produce as much as I can write. There are times where I'm like, what am I going to do with this? Like Christina and I were talking about a little 1 minute web series that I started and I'm I'm really not sure where to go with it now because these guys want character development, and I'm like, in 1 minute, I'm not sure if I can do that, but I don't know. Maybe something will come of it. I'm not sure, but actually, with the 30-page script, I did kind of flounder as what's the big conflict going to be, and the guy who wanted me to write it, I said, I have this, I have this, I have this. What's the big conflict? And he shot off an email to me, and he immediately came up with it. So now I have to do the rest of the work with that. The biggest challenge to me in terms of developing something is the time to put into it. The shorts, I can sit down and vomit out something in 15 minutes. But to sit down and take something from start to finish, especially when I'm in a 3-day seminar all weekend, not that I'm bitter, that's my biggest challenge is time, I'd say. Thank you for the question. I have a question for you. Do you insist that all of your lead actresses have red hair?
They must look like me.
Actually, from my first short, the leads were not redheads, but I do love throwing redheads in there when I can. We're an underappreciated group of people who will flock to things if redheads are involved. As I've learned, I have, for the fun of it, I created a Tumblr. It's a blog dedicated to redhead things, and I made it as a joke, and I'm up to almost 3,000 followers now.
Wow.
And they'll send me messages like, "You're an inspiration to all redheads out there." And it's very amusing.
Amazing.
Why don't you tell everybody the name of your production company?
Super Ginge.
Sarah, so the question is to anybody who has a thought, what are the challenges of directing something, acting in something, being part of something that's so short?
I had absolutely no challenges. It was a joy from start to finish.
There was like no problem because I know it looked really short, but it took like
8
a
hours?
good 8 hours. So although it looked really short, it was like, it took a good chunk of time to make it. So there was like no problem in that. I don't even know if I answered the question.
Well, I guess coming from a director's point of view and also editor, I edited it together. I guess my main thing was I knew we had a very short amount of script, and which would give us the ability to do a lot of different shots. But I tried to focus on getting, shots that kind of went long enough through the script so that we wouldn't have to cut it up as much because it's already so short. I didn't want it to feel like it was going boom, 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 boom. And I noticed that I tried to do that as much as I could on set while we were shooting it, and I noticed that while editing, there were still a few moments where I wish I had gotten a little bit longer for something, just to try to make it feel like we're not getting to certain points too quickly. I didn't want it to feel, it is very short, but I didn't want it to feel like, and that was rushed. So I guess that was my main kind of dealing with that kind of stuff from director and editor point of view.
I'm always fascinated by really, really short or sort of micro short films because my background has been, started off making short films that were nearly 40 minutes long. And so there's all this, character arc. There's like a couple subplots in there. And there's none of that. It's very clean, sort of efficient stuff, if you will. And so what I admire about this script is that there is that efficiency and that sort of like directness, because I think one of the biggest challenges is setting up characters, setting up the conflict, and then like going somewhere with it in a matter of you know, 2 or 3 minutes, that's really like quite an accomplishment. So that's props to Audrey for writing. Now, I think the biggest challenge that we face in some ways with a project like this is, how do you cut a trailer for it? You know, all our other films have trailers, and I'm kind of like, does this one just not get a trailer? I mean, some trailers are as long as this movie, and how do you, you know, how do you sort of entice people to watch it without sort of giving away the punchline, so to speak? And so I think that's kind of the challenge now with something this short, is like, how do you market it? Because really, in a real sense, I just want to tell people, it's 3.5 minutes. Just sit down and watch it. By the time I tell you anything about it, it's like, you could have just seen it.
Yeah.
So just watch it. But, you know, somebody who's never heard of us or heard of the film or doesn't know anything about it, like, we got to entice them somehow.
Yeah, actually, think about it now too. Another challenge that I found myself with was in post, when it got to the time for doing music and composing, the challenge of trying to find moments where music would work but not have it overpower. Because with it being 3 minutes, it's like if you have a couple minutes of music, then almost the entire thing is filled with it, and then that doesn't work. So when I was working with the composer, we had a lot of taking it back, because there was at one point where it was just, there was so much music, I was like, it's way too overpowering for something that's so short. So I guess that was my biggest challenge when trying to get it so that it felt balanced, not too one way or the other.
Yeah. I feel like I think of these, I used to do opera. And so the micro shorts remind me of the arias in the opera. So the recitative is where all of the plot and story is, and then you get to the aria, and the aria is like one emotion, one affect. And so the micro shorts strike me as the aria. You're going to tell one story, one part of a story. The question is, how did you grow, either personally or what? Either personally or professionally. How did you grow?
Well, it's a real pleasure for me to see how these guys work. And I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but Michael filled in as DP at the last minute, and I don't know the other person who was supposed to be DP, but I was like, yes, because I wanted to see Michael working, and I still want to see more of that. So that was a great opportunity for me. It was wonderful to be directed by Yvonne, and as I said in the special features, that she had a different take on that line. And one line in a 3-minute film is very significant, and it just brought a whole different dynamic to the film, and that was just such a pleasure to see somebody do that to my words. Where as if I had done it, it wouldn't have happened that way, and I think it's a much better product now. So, you know, I suppose I grew by seeing how someone else could contribute to the product and make it better.
I mean, I haven't really done much of like on-screen acting, so I'm not really like used to the whole idea of a set. And so like when I came on, I was like scared. I'm like, oh, no one's gonna talk to me. I'm just a kid. But I felt that it was just like a fun group to be with, because I just remember like laughing a lot, and then like the more you feel comfortable on set, like off the camera, that once the camera starts rolling, it just felt more natural, because like you kind of have, I don't know, not really like an established background with anyone, because I just met all of you, but so I guess going on where like I guess just make it a more fun environment, because then I feel like the outcome will just be better, because you have a better chemistry with the people you're working with, and I guess that's it.
And you did great. You did a really wonderful job.
Yeah.
All right, I have a serious answer and then I guess kind of a funny answer. In all seriousness, one of the main things that this helped me to grow with is that I tend to be a very wordy person, including in my scripts and stuff. Everything I do, I tend to overword things. And with working on something that's so short and that gets so much out in such a short amount of time, really, just that alone helped me a lot to try to figure out, okay, we've got 3 pages, it's gonna be about 3 minutes, this is the time we gotta work in, this is where we gotta get everything to fit. And then I guess the funny answer is that when shooting this, I had actually just gotten out of the hospital. And so I was
That's
still...
hilarious.
I just gotten out of the hospital, and I was still kind of in pain and everything. They thought it was a ruptured appendix. It turns out I have Crohn's. But so, being that I'd been out for maybe 2 days, still in pain, still tired, I was a lot calmer on set than I'm used to being, especially when I'm in this kind of a role. And it sort of helped me to really focus
do you mean
on...
more sedated?
Nope. Nope. This is before I got those kind of meds. But no, it just kind of made me focus really on what was actually important to get in terms of like, what shots do we really need? Do we really need another one of that? No, I think we're okay to go on. I think we've got it. It kind of helped me to stop second guessing myself and just focus on getting through the day and making sure we got what we needed to be able to put the piece together.
Yeah, I mean, every project is sort of an opportunity to grow in some way. I always like working with new people, and so I never had an opportunity to work with Yvonne before or Audrey. So it was a good sort of experience to be able to jump in, and I don't get to do a lot of comedies, so it's fun to jump in and get to do something that's funny, and so it's a little different from my perspective as a director of photography, to come in and light a comedy versus a zombie movie, and I've done a couple of those. They're fun. But professionally, sort of, I think the biggest growth for me would probably be just dealing with windows I couldn't completely cover. That was fun.
The only thing I ever mentioned. There's so many windows. They're so big.
Windows everywhere, and not nary a blind in the house. But that's okay. We made it work, and we actually used the light to our advantage. But it was certainly an exercise in learning to control changing sunlight, and everything had to be matching color temperature to that sunlight coming in from outside, so you didn't have this weird mix, and you end up with either the windows all looking kind of blue, or you end up with all the interior lights looking kind of orange. So we had to go through and match all of that up. But yeah, it was good. It was a fun challenge, and I think in the end, embracing it and using it to our advantage, and even in sort of, we did a lot of sort of white sheets over some of those windows to get an even overexposure kind of look, and avoid seeing stuff outside that we didn't want to see. And then other windows we blocked out and put our own lights in just to make it be the right look. And so, fun little challenges like that. But it was, it was fun to do it, and did it without a gaffer, which was also its own challenge, but fun because I've had to do that before, and it's, it's kind of it's potentially slower in some ways, but at the same time, kind of a fun challenge to be able to look at the shots then and be like, yeah, I'm satisfied with that lighting, and I had to kind of scramble and make it happen. I mean, we had some help, but yeah, it's kind of fun that way.
Is there a different feel on a set for you on a drama versus a comedy?
Not really, because I'm a horrible person at taking things seriously. As you can tell. So not totally. And there are moments, there are times. It depends. Yeah. It depends on the movie and the set and the kind of control. There's probably a bigger difference on whether I'm directing or not. Mm-hmm. When I'm directing, I tend to be a little more like, so we're going to put some cigaros on over there, and it's going to be playing, and then we're going to set the shot up over here. Okay.
So it makes you whisper.
Yeah, that happens sometimes when I direct. And then I go crazy. Yep.
There is a little thing, and I don't think this is a Stories by the River thing. This is way before us.
Yes. Mhm.
They like put these clothespins on the director, so that suddenly the director is full of clothespins in the bag, and it's just been happening little by little.
Yes.
I've seen this with a couple of the films.
Mm-hmm.
But we were asked on one set to cut the joking.
Mm-hmm.
Not this set, but
Guys, it's really serious.
because they didn't want the actress to get out of, like she had to be
Mm-hmm.
sad, and they didn't want anybody to mess that up for her. So on occasion, I suppose.
There are those times. Yes, there's definitely those moments where you got to be like, okay, you create a little different atmosphere. So it does, I think, depend on the project. So, but then there are also plenty of times when you're doing something really, really, really serious and dark and all that kind of stuff. And the way you get through it is joking through the whole thing. Otherwise, everybody's just gonna go cry in the corner. The grips are over in the corner hugging,
I think you learn something with every set that you're on. So I feel like I started ADing a few films before this, so assistant directing. I feel like this was my best yet in terms of feeling comfortable communicating, with the director and keeping it all straight. It was our first film having 3 kids, and so that was a whole nother challenge. Like, what are we going to do with our kids, and how do we take care of them really well and be present to what we're doing professionally? So that happened. And then there was this little moment. So I'm in charge of contracts, and in some ways the contracts are silly because short films are very small business. But
The contract was longer than the film.
It really is.
it has to be done. And somebody was nobody ever. I mean, some people don't even read the contract; they just sign it because everybody knows there's like nothing in it except for the food and the IMDb credit. And so. But one person really wanted to nitpick and ask more questions, and it forced me, like, what am I going to say about this at the end of the day? And I got back to the person and I said, look, I'm sure there's no good answer. The contract is that way because that's the way it's been for 7 movies now, But I can tell you this, when people work on our sets, they like it, they ask to come back, there's a family atmosphere, and so this is what you're going to get out of the set if you join us. And so I'm sorry that's not a better answer. It's just always been that way. It's like, why do you cut the ends off your meatloaf or something? Because my great-great-great-grandmother's oven was too small to fit the meatloaf in, So, and then the person actually did get back to me and say thanks. They said, thanks for your really thoughtful response. And I was like, really? It's thoughtful? Because I thought it was going to be really stupid. So I think that's a meaningful moment to me. Like, what does Stories by the River offer? It offers a family-like atmosphere. We will feed you, you'll get your credit, and we'll be friends, which maybe is to your point a little bit. Like, I felt comfortable.
Yeah, I was really friendly and fun. At first I was scared, but then I realized there's nothing to be scared about because everyone's so nice.
Did that help you with your character development?
No, yeah. Yeah, it was just a fun and friendly environment, which just took a lot of pressure off, I guess, and just made it more natural, or I don't know, yeah.
Yeah. So that is all we're going to do for the evening because I promised we would end at 8, and it's 8:15, so right about 8. But do feel free to stay. There's snacks, and feel free to keep asking questions or congratulating or taking pictures or whatever you'd like to do. And as we mentioned, it's name your own price at the Stories by the River website, so storiesbytheriver.org. And so you're welcome to share about this with people in the YouTube channel. And so all this should come out shortly.
Yep.
And we'll let everybody know that's involved. Like, it's out, and then you can start sharing.
And feel free to check out our other films,
Yeah.
please.
Yes. So thank you. Thank you for coming.